I'm so happy you joined us for this topic. We're talking African Americans and our increased risk for developing Alzheimer's disease and other dementias. I'm Dr. Macie Smith. I'm your social gerontologist. I am a licensed social worker, a gerontologist, a media personality, and most of all, I am an advocate for family caregiving and those living with Alzheimer's, dementia, disabilities, any vulnerable population. I'm your advocate, I'm your champion, and I thank all of you for joining me to help me in this fight. So when we talk about African Americans' increased risk for developing Alzheimer's disease, it's important for you all to know that Black people, we are twice as likely to develop Alzheimer's and other dementias than our Caucasian counterparts. That's important because today we're going to learn ways to reduce our risks. We're going to learn tangible ways that are not only attainable, but also affordable, because I think sometimes we forget that we also have to be able to afford the stuff that we can attain, especially when it comes to overall health. And you will be happy to know that I'm not going to be talking by myself. I actually have the good doctor who's going to be joining us. And I know y'all are already probably saying, what is NeuroReserve? Well, we're going to have Dr. Ed Parks come on and talk about, hey, Dr. Parks.
Hey, how are you doing?
Can you
You look great.
hear me?
Yes.
You can hear me?
Oh, yeah.
Okay,
Yeah,
wait
I can hear you.
a minute. I don't think I can hear you. Let's see. Can y'all hear Dr. Parks?
Can you hear me okay? Yeah.
Let me know if y'all can hear Dr. Parks.
All right. So it should be.
Okay, I'm going to try something. Give me a minute. Dr. Parks?
Yes.
That was my fault. Could you hear me?
Yeah. Oh,
The whole
yeah.
time? Okay, good. Okay, good. All right. So you heard the intro. We got everybody in here. I'm going to be waving at some people. Y'all, if y'all have any questions, post your questions. I'm going to be posing them to Dr. Parks. Dr. Parks, can we start off with taking a few minutes just for you to introduce yourself, tell the folks who you are, what you do, and why it is that you do what you do?
Oh, yeah. Thank you very much. And just first of all, thanks so much for just having me. I mean, you're a big brain health advocate, educator, speaker, board member, the whole shebang, right?
Is that it? That's it.
So it's a huge privilege to speak with you. And for me, my specialty is nutrition and also pharmaceuticals. That goes back to a long time, about 15 or 16 years, doing research and development in that field. And that came out of my background with a PhD in chemical and biomolecular engineering, which is a mouthful. But that comes from that. But I think what people really would relate to is that I have family history of neurodegenerative disease. And so my father, he had dementia. My mother took care of him as the primary caregiver. It was a 19-year struggle and fight. And, it had a huge impact, on our family. He was diagnosed really early, at like the age of 48, 49. You know how it always takes a couple of years to get diagnosed?
That's right.
Yeah.
What type of dementia did he have? Because it's important to know that there are different types of dementia.
Yeah, he had general cognitive decline, and then he had Lewy body dementia. Yeah.
What I call the scary dementia, the one that has those visual hallucinations
in
addition to memory loss.
Exactly. It's always kind of a mix. They're never one specific type of dementia, and he had mostly the Lewy body type, and it's a kind of thing where people get very, very scared, and there's so many times when I'd be at home and he'd be adamant that there were people in the house, things like that, and that gets that could get violent, that can get very agitated, and so my mom really, I mean, she really it's just a tremendous amount of love and commitment that she put into caregiving for him. So anyway, that's that's the reason why I founded a company called NeuroReserve, and we'll talk about that a little bit later, I'm sure. So.
Yes, we will. And I'll tell the folks full transparency. I am a NeuroReserve partner. And as we start talking about just some of the content here and why African Americans are twice as likely to develop Alzheimer's and progressive types of dementia, you mentioned earlier that you, first of all, have a family history of dementia, so you're personally connected to it. You're professionally trained in pharmaceuticals, so you married the two together, because one thing that many people don't know, and I don't think they know well, is that even though right now Alzheimer's disease and those progressive types of dementia cannot be treated, cured, 100% prevented, we know from research that approximately 1/3 of these dementias can be possibly prevented, or your risks can be significantly reduced by what we put in our mouth. And that's something that we control. So tell us why African Americans in particular have a higher risk of developing Alzheimer's and those progressive types of dementia.
Yeah, and I'm sure you're going to have, we're going to have a nice conversation here. Okay, so I mean, because you already said, 2 times the risk. So African Americans have 2 times the risk of developing dementia, in their lifetime over their Caucasian counterparts, right? And the question is why? What can we do about it? One thing, when we had a chance to hang out earlier today, and that was awesome. And one thing we did talk about was genetics, and that's one thing I wanted to start with, because I think a lot of people might be afraid, and they'll say, well, if I have twice the risk, am I just stuck? Am I locked into it? Is it genetics? Am I genetically stuck? And I just want to let people know that if you're African American, there is no specific gene or set of genes that's been kind of that plays a predominant role in developing Alzheimer's disease.
Thank you for saying that. Thank you so much for saying that. Y'all heard that right? Just because you Black, that don't mean you're gonna get it just because you Black.
No, and here, and we're learning more about it. Great research going on at Rush University Medical Center up there in Chicago. But one thing is, in fact, African Americans, given their West African ancestry, might actually have some genetic protection against Alzheimer's, except in certain cases where maybe other genes come in and then they push people more towards it. So it's a plus and a minus, just like everybody else, right? A tug and a pull, or push and a pull on the genetic side of things. So I think that what's really important to know is that, when it comes to the risk, that 2 times risk, it really comes down to society, social factors, cultural, and ultimately it's lifestyle. And those are the big determinants that will play into a person's kind of brain fate, right, as they age.
So I'm glad you mentioned this, because real talk, what's up to the SCSU Bulldog Report. That's a fellow Bulldog, Dr. Parks, who keeps the block hot when it comes to all things sports. That's my brother. So he shared this for us. I told him,
I hope he has
as many of our
Georgia Tech folks.
Georgia Tech. See, he's talking about Georgia Tech. What we got to say about that? So he absolutely did share this to his network. I'm glad that you said that depending on, so for African Americans, and correct me if I'm wrong, from West Africa could possibly have some protection against based on the genetic disposition. And I want to give a shout out to your counterparts in my, I have a secret obsession with Rush University and their research, which is top of the line. So shout out to them and this advancement. That is very promising to know, because all too often when it comes to these top 10 illnesses, Black people, especially Black women, are at the epicenter, at the top tier of these chronic illnesses. And so we talk about lifestyle changes, lifestyle experiences. You talked about society. So when we look at the data, and this is not something that Dr. Parks is making up, it's not something that I'm making up. Data supports that we are in communities that have food deserts. So the opportunity to choose healthy food items that brings about less inflammation in our bodies is very limited. When we talk about just recognizing the early signs of Alzheimer's or dementia, we know that Black people are typically diagnosed later in the disease process when the medications and the treatment for the condition or the symptoms may not be as palatable. Can you speak to us about that in terms of the whole medical system as it relates to diagnosing African Americans with Alzheimer's?
You know, when I've been speaking, whenever I, you know, we have a pretty extensive group of medical advisors for the company, obviously, and we work, you know, we collaborate. One of the biggest things that physicians, researchers say is that what they experience is there's a general distrust of the healthcare system, more so in African Americans than, say, Caucasians, right? And that stems from a lot of things, right? A lot of history, you know, and what that does is it makes it so that they're not as willing to either go to, right? The community is not willing to go to the doctor for basic stuff, right? And pick up some of these other risk factors and understand them and do something about it. Or they're less willing to participate in clinical studies where we can learn more about risk factors and so forth with respect to African Americans, right? So it kind of hits on both ends, on the research side and also on the public health side. And then for those who actually make it to the doctor, right? So they're like, okay, I'm going to go. Right. I'm going to go to the doctor, get to the doctor. We all know the doctor experience nowadays, especially in primary care, is not exactly the best, right? It's you know, it's either it'll fall short of expectations in a lot of cases when a doctor's only got like 5 minutes to talk. And I remember, you know, we were talking about this. My love language is touch, right? And touch, you told me, what did you say? You said something that touch is like that seals the deal, right?
That's the determining factor. If my clients, my seniors, if that doctor does not touch them or show some type of physical connection, they don't want nothing to do with that doctor because they feel like the doctor is not there for them. They're there for a check. Yeah.
Yeah. So just that bedside manner, right? There's a lot lacking there. And so, I mean, I would encourage, you know, everyone who's listening to this who's African American and maybe you've been thinking, I don't want to go to the doctor, you know, just take advantage of that. Just even that yearly checkup, you know, that's just built in. You can show up, and there you can pick up things. And I know it may not be the best experience, and trust me, hey, I'm feeling it too. Everybody's feeling it, right? But if you go there, ask them about things like this. There are 3 health-related risk factors that contribute to Alzheimer's and related dementias here. And I think we can walk through them here really quick.
Yes, you know? Please.
And this is what's contributing to that 2 times risk, right? Okay. So one thing is heart disease, right? That's something that we can pick up quickly. Heart disease. So, you know, African Americans have a 30% greater likelihood of heart disease in midlife, right? Wow. And then 30% more. And then on top of that, next thing is hypertension. So high blood pressure, you know, African Americans.
So Dr. Parks, you speaking our language. So I'm from South Carolina, and we don't call it high blood pressure. We call it hypertension or pressure.
I just like pressure. It's just pressure, you know.
Heart disease, hypertension,
right? African Americans, 50% higher likelihood of hypertension by the time they're the age 55. Okay. Yeah, and then finally, diabetes, right? African Americans, 60% greater likelihood of diabetes at midlife. And so now you add all that together and they all compound, and those contribute to brain health. They are huge contributors to brain health. And I can get into a big, long scientific discussion about why and their mechanisms, but definitely when you're talking about brain health, you need to have great cardiovascular health to get that blood up there, to transfer those nutrients into that brain. And you have to have great energy health. And that's the diabetes side of things, right? Okay. Great energy health, because what diabetes does is it makes it hard for that sugar that your brain needs to get the fuel it needs to run. And the problem with diabetes is it can't get in there anymore because diabetes keeps it all in the bloodstream. It can't go into all the other parts of the body, right? So fueling the brain is very important. Keeping the lanes all clear and open are very important. And if you just go to the doctor, just get checked upon, even just those basic things, you might be able to start working on some things there that can really make a difference. And that's just one aspect that we could talk about, the things that you can do. But those are the three health-related aspects that contribute.
So let's recap the 3 health-related risk factors that can be possibly prevented if you're not predisposed and if it's not genetics. Heart disease, which can be brought on about because of hypertension, aka high blood pressure, aka pressure, along with several other things such as stress and other things. And then there's diabetes. These 3 medical contributing factors to possibly developing Alzheimer's disease that puts African Americans at higher risk, they all relate to one thing, at least one thing that we can control at least 3 times a day. Because many people eat 3 times a day, which I eat 2 times a day, because coffee in the morning, that don't count as a meal, does it? Now, the person we met earlier, that was
so
like
that's kind of a nice benefit, right? It's like only 5 calories, so whatever.
Yeah,
good.
Right.
Really put other things in, but
you know, just make that base coffee. So those are 3 things that can be prevented. And so NeuroReserve, I always want to call it NeuroReserve with a D on the end. I don't know why I do that. NeuroReserve, I'll go ahead and tell you, and I'll tell those of you who are listening why I gravitated toward NeuroReserve and why it was just a aha moment for me. We see all the time, everywhere, about medical care, physical health. Your body only does what your brain tells it to do. And so if our brain is not healthy, then our body is not going to be healthy. Our brain tells our body what to choose to eat. Y'all know y'all get that sugar craving or that savory craving or that salt rush or whatever, and you just go for it. If your brain is healthy and you think cognitively about it, then you may make different choices. So I always wanted something for brain health, a supplement, because I eat well as much as I can. Because timing is a factor. And I know you're going to tell us about some time-saving tips before we close. But I needed something, or wanted something as a supplement, because I don't have Alzheimer's, I don't have dementia. However, I do have some cloudiness sometimes, especially when I'm not engaged and I want to have like mindless thoughts, right? I have cloudiness. I forget names all the time, and I wanted to preserve a healthy brain. So one of the things that interested me was the pamphlet that I got with my information. And when I did my vetting of NeuroReserve, y'all, this is all the research. Y'all know I'm a researcher. This is all the research that has gone into NeuroReserve, this product that you have seen me take. And I want you to know, Dr. Parks, you should already know this anyway, but my folks here, I don't recommend anything, and I don't bring anybody on my platform if I have not tried the product or had some experience and it has been a pleasurable experience and it is a benefit to you. So when I educate people about different things related to aging, cognitive impairment, dementia, I want to leave them with tangible, affordable resources that they can use. And so can you talk to us about just some things that we can do, not only in the African American community, because we know that sometimes the cards are stacked against us. We're in America, and let's call a spade a spade. And so we have to be responsible and make responsible decisions about what we put in our body. How can you help us with tangible tips in terms of eating, cooking, and then tell us a little bit about NeuroReserve?
Yeah, absolutely. Because nutrition is a really, really big lever you can pull, okay, to really, really bring down our risk. And one thing I'll mention just to start out is there's something called the MIND diet.
Yes.
And it's an acronym. It stands for Mediterranean Intervention for Neurodegenerative Delay. It's a really long acronym. It was developed once again by our friends over at Rush University Medical Center. And what it is it's a Mediterranean type diet. And in 2015, and since then, a lot of other studies have come out, but in 2015, they released their first paper on the MIND diet. And what they showed is that if you follow this diet, what happens is that your risk for Alzheimer's disease drops by over 50%. Okay, that's a big number. Your risk for Parkinson's drops by about over 40%. And also, you would have a cognitive age, as they call it, that's about 8 years younger than your peers at the same age as you. So it's almost like almost like a decade of like youth, or something. So that's that's the MIND diet. And I'll tell you two things about the MIND diet. The foods that they really want you to eat in the MIND diet. There's 10 of them. I'll just walk through them really quick.
Yes, please.
It's dark leafy green vegetables is one. Right. Okay. Berries is another, and olive oil is another. And I'm going to try and get this right. Nuts is another, and beans is a fifth, right? Okay. And then we have whole grains, and then also fish, preferably cold water fish, not fried, right? Right. Moderate amounts of poultry, once again, not fried, right? And then also wine, and then I know in moderation. Back it up. In moderation, yeah. Yes. So there are
if your doctor said you can have it.
So yeah. So there's some benefits in moderate wine, moderate wine consumption, and then also other colorful vegetables that round it out, right? And it also means, as the second part, things you don't want to eat, you want to avoid. And there are 5 things there that you want to limit. And one is red meat. So beef, they consider pork along those lines as well.
Okay,
sweets.
Beef and pork. Okay.
So yeah.
You said beef, pork, and beets?
No, just beef and pork.
Beef. Okay.
And I think beef sounded like beets for a second, but beef, or red meat, I should say. And then there's sweets, and there's butter. Unfortunately, I love butter, right?
So do you mean margarine or butter?
Both, actually. And they actually specifically stated both. They said butter or margarine. I was about to not say margarine because I figured that might be overkill, but butter and margarine were exactly written there. And then the next thing is cheese. Okay, so cheese is actually a large source of saturated fat. It's actually the largest source of saturated fat in the American diet.
So we're trying to avoid saturated fat.
Basically, yeah, because butter is saturated fat.
Okay.
Cheese has a large component of saturated fat, and then finally any fried fast foods. Okay, so those are like the 5 things to limit as much as you can, depending on how tough it is to do that, what your lifestyle and vocation is, and things like that. But when I founded NeuroReserve, my company, which is a nutritional company for brain health, and I got together some medical advisors, from Rush, from Cleveland Clinic, and from Barrow Neurological Institute, which is out in Arizona. We coalesced around this idea that this MIND diet has tremendous evidence, and there's so many other studies that back it up. Right? So if we're going to design a product for long-term brain health and to help people reduce their risk of these diseases, we got to base our product on the MIND diet. We got to basically make a product where we look at where all these people who are really good at adhering to the MIND diet are in their intakes of brain healthy nutrients, and look at where the standard American diet is down here, and say, here's the gap, and we identified 17 nutrients to close those gaps. Yeah. And we pulled those nutrients from those same food groups from the MIND diet. And that's what ended up becoming relevant, actually.
I love it. I love it. So, yeah, I ain't gonna lie, Dr. Parks. I'm stuck on that butter and that margarine, but look, I'm stuck on that. I'm stuck on that margarine and that butter because at one time, they were saying, the infamous they were saying, don't want to use you want to use margarine because it lowers your cholesterol, because cholesterol and high blood pressure tend to go hand in hand. But then it's artificial, right?
Yeah.
And then now the butter it has the saturated fat, and then the cheese. Now I can do without the butter because I can use oil. Thankfully, I can't cook that well, so I use olive oil with everything.
Oh, wonderful.
Nana's books here says avoid seed oils.
So yeah, so when it comes to like canola oil, which is another way, it's called rapeseed. There's so any of these a lot of vegetable oils basically are derived from the seeds. And what
Thank
they
you, Nana's books.
What's that?
No, I was telling Nana's books, thank you, about the avoid seed oil, because I've been seeing a lot about grapeseed oil.
So that one, now that oil, apparently it has a pretty high smoke point, which means that it could be resistant to getting like rancid if you're cooking things at a really high temperature, maybe on a pan or something like that. I mean, at my house, we tend to use olive oil and also avocado oil. Actually, that's a wonderful high temperature oil. It's brain healthy.
Good.
It's monounsaturated.
Got you.
Now,
I have learned that all olive oils are not created equal.
Yeah.
So what's extra virgin olive oil or regular olive oil?
So
what's the difference?
Yeah. So basically, it comes down to refining and also their, a little bit to shelf life, things like that.
Okay.
But basically, you want to get extra virgin olive oil.
Okay.
EVOO, extra virgin olive oil. There's going to be virgin olive oil. There's going to be refined olive oils. You want to avoid those. You want to kind of stick with extra virgin olive oil because that's been the minimally processed type, and that's going to have the most nutrients and antioxidants still in them when you take it or when you cook with it. Yeah.
Okay.
So,
perfect. Magic did it too. Magic did it too. Okay, Magic did it. Magic did it too. Said olive oil and avocado oil.
The dawn.
Dawn, baby. I am writing that down because I just get so confused. I just didn't know, but I do have olive oil.
Mm-hmm.
I limit my red meat and my pork. Mine is bacon. I'm working on that.
I love bacon.
I'm working on that. I don't eat it every day.
I'm working on that
eat
too.
Beef once every 3 to 4 months. If because I've been, just eating it sparingly because I do know that it causes inflammation. And if I know that what I put in my mouth is going to reduce my risk of developing brain robbing disease, I'm going to do it. But it's not that important.
Yeah.
I'm just being honest. It's just not that important. And you can always, you can always substitute it for something like, I'm from the country. We ate spaghetti with hamburger meat. I've been making spaghetti with ground turkey for, I know, about 10 years. My mom was like, you eat diet food. That's what she says. I eat diet food.
We use chicken.
She didn't even know it was beef until she didn't even know that it was poultry until I told her, right? So it's, I'm glad that you're mentioning this, and then you're telling us tangible things that we can do today. So Linda says thumbs up, perfect. Magic did it too, says, and we can eat them a lot. I mean, I use them a lot on my salads. Is that okay? Can she use the oils on her salad? She's saying
that's the best. Yeah, you just drizzle it over. Obviously you mix it with a little bit of balsamic, vinegar. Boom, you got a vinaigrette type, dressing. Just shake it up and put it on there. I'm excited
because you always think if you change your diet, and y'all, I don't believe in dieting at all. I do believe in healthy meal choices. Mm-hmm. And I think we just thought that when you don't use the high salt, the high fat items, that your food is going to be tasteless. Well, it's not. And I have like the seasoning that doesn't have that much salt. Because by the way, we do need some salt. Because I had a friend who had low blood pressure, and if she didn't get enough salt, she would pass out. Yeah. And so we need some salt. And so knowing the tasteful options to me is a game changer in our health, because we are responsible for our health. And if these are changes we can make free of charge, and we can, outside of, when y'all go to purchase the NeuroReserve as a supplement, these are the things that we really need to hear that we don't see on television. So thank you, Dr. Parks.
Yeah, you bet. You bet. There's a lot of great, things. I know time is so important for people, so when it comes to cooking and there's a lot of ways you can batch cook, things like that, we've been
So
we've been
tell
doing.
us about that. We talked about that earlier.
Yeah,
I was
yeah,
like,
batch
oh gosh, I was
cooking.
doing that.
I love the concept, no, it's just, and it's so simple. Like, one thing you could do is I know, because berries is big on my diet, right? So you want to get some berries, and the thing is, it's like every time you have to wash them, every time, so just wash a whole bunch of them on like a Sunday afternoon. Just get them all washed. That way you could just reach for them all week. It's just like, just that in and of itself reduces the burden, that kind of mountain you got to get over, right? And takes away that temptation to go reach for something else.
Excellent.
Right?
Point.
So it's just those little things to start, and then there's this, like, my wife's really into sheet pan cooking right now, which is basically like, okay, I'm going to take broccoli, throw them on a pan. I'm going to take carrots. I'm going to take Brussels sprouts, throw them on a pan, put some salt and pepper on them. Of course, drizzle a bunch of olive oil all over it, and put in a couple of those sheets into the oven.
Yeah.
Cook them up, take them out, and throw them into this big container, so that they're always around all week long. So once again, it just makes it easier to not have to reach for that next thing, that might be a processed food, or that, that really kind of like packaged food or something along those lines.
Yeah.
Instead, you're just going to reach for those vegetables and just throw them on, on a plate with, whatever it may be, like a brown rice. I know. I wish it could be white, but brown rice, something like, just throw it on there. Also, big pot of beans. That's just so healthy for the brain. It's so healthy for diabetes health also, but for the brain as well.
So Magic did said, yes, broccoli is like the craving season of broccoli or something. I don't know what it is, but I want broccoli and Brussels sprouts. Like, I can just like hoard and like gorge those things. I mean, that's a blessing though, because when you're younger, you don't like that stuff. But as we get older, our taste buds change. Thank the Lord for the better. Yeah. We have Vintner on here, Dr. Parks. Vintner is a wine connoisseur, and so you missed it earlier. He said that in the Relevate research that was done, red wine is one of the nutrients that, in terms of the dietary pattern, he wasn't lying, y'all. It's right here. It's fine. That's you, Vintner.
Yeah. So
she helped me, figure out the right wines to drink. And you would appreciate this too, Dr. Parks. She's African American, and she connected me. I found her on Instagram, and I wanted to know more about. And Vintner, please, I know I'm going to say this wrong. The black people who make wine. They got a name. Oh. Put it in here. I don't know the name of the black people who make the wine, but that's what I want to know. And I actually purchased wine from them. The one that I think we love, that I know I love, was Sip and Share Wines. And it's a black company. They make their own wines. It's red wine. It's delicious. And Dr. Parks just said it can help to reduce your risk of Alzheimer's disease by 50%. So.
Okay, not just the wine alone, just everybody.
No, yeah, not by itself. Not. You see how lies get out? No.
Yeah, but there's a couple of nuances around that. I mean, so one thing is what wine has in it, obviously, are a lot of flavonoids, which are these phytonutrients that are antioxidant and anti-inflammatory, right? And especially red wine, right, has those really dark violet kind of pigments in it, right? Mm. And those are anthocyanins. That's kind of a word for them, right? And those have specific, brain healthy benefits. So that's what's so great about it. I'll say one thing, and I'm going to be the Debbie Downer here, right? So I get just hold on. So for people who happen to be APOE4 positive, right? And that's kind of like it's a genetic risk factor. It is not a gene for Alzheimer's. It doesn't mean you're going to get it. It's a genetic risk factor, right? That if people have it, they're at a higher risk of being diagnosed one day. That doesn't mean they're gonna be. It just means that they got to work that much harder to bend it back, right? And for people who are APOE positive, they should watch out for the wine a little bit. So that's the key. So just watch out on that. That's something they do want to avoid. And that's about 20-ish% of the population. Yes. And for everybody else, you have a glass, here or there. That's in moderation. That's a brain healthy habit, and it's because of these flavonoids you're taking in and the way they absorb.
That's good.
So,
And I've read and worked with some geriatricians about the resveratrol that's in it. There's some studies being done about the resveratrol in the red wine. So yes, we have to put this disclaimer. I like to cut up, but we have to put this disclaimer. We are not diagnosing, treating, or curing anything that we've discussed today on this IG Live. Please talk to your primary care physician, not your cousins, but your primary care physicians about the risks and the benefits to drinking red wine and everything else that we talked about today, because some things that are universally healthy, it may not work for you. You may have a condition that may not work well with these things that we mentioned. So this is, generally speaking, what the research has supported. And I am very thankful for you, Dr. Parks, for sharing with us. I mean, we have some great feedback. Venor says, of course, drink that wine in moderation now. Linda says, her doctor said that she can drink red wine occasionally. Post that prescription, Linda. I don't know about that. I'm just joking. Nana's book said walnuts are great for the brain. So I'll tell you what, Lord, this is so good. So I never thought that fruit belonged on a salad. That I gagged at that. My husband has always been health conscious. He always eats healthy. Sometimes he'll meat shame me, but I don't care. But I need that, in my life. And I don't know. I think one day I was hungry and I wanted to taste his salad because I like to watch people eat, right? It's weird, I know. And when they're eating the food and it looks so good, I tasted it and I was like, dang, that was good. It had strawberries on it. And then when I got Relevate, which is the vitamin supplement we're going to tell y'all about in a few minutes, and I got all the material, the literature, and I saw the walnuts, the berries, and the greens. And so I just put it all together, and I had some vinaigrette dressing. Baby, when the nuts and the berries and the spinach hit all together, it was a nice marriage. It was a celebration in my mouth, and I made one for my husband. He eats it lunch, dinner, snack. So one of the things I want you to talk about real quick, because a lot of people don't eat healthy because they can't afford to eat healthy. Do you have any tips? I'm going to provide a tip, but I want you to provide some tips on ways that we can make these healthy choices and it not break the bank. I know one thing, and this is not a commercial, y'all. I'm just keeping it 100. Aldi, has great prices on fresh fruit and fresh vegetables. I've noticed that in terms of just shopping. But do you have any tips that you can share with us?
Well, I mean, that's what I was going to say. Generally, fruits, vegetables, whole grains, things like that, they're much more affordable if you think about it than packaged and processed foods that you find in the middle. So the middle of a grocery store, right? All the aisles in the middle, right? They have all your standard packaged and processed foods, right? And if you really look at the pricing, along the periphery, where the fruits and vegetables are, dairy and et cetera, that's where the prices are lower. So the first thing to do is to do your best. And I know there's always that temptation to walk down those middle aisles, but kind of minimize what you're doing over there and what you're purchasing in there. And that frees up, a lot more resources to go after bulk amounts, right, of the vegetables and fruits, which tend, like I said, to be less expensive. Now, one thing people might ask is, well, do I have to buy organic all the time? Things like that. Do I have to buy free range, everything, pasture-raised, that's wonderful. However, the benefits outweigh the risks of it not being organic, right? Yeah. So when it comes to that, you buy your berries, right? And when we buy them, we put them in a bowl of water. You add a little vinegar to it, stir it up.
What does the vinegar do?
So that's just, it's just like it's like a detergent, right? It's just clean it out, So that's what we do. We take a little bit of apple cider vinegar, dump in a couple tablespoons in a big bowl with our berries, and just kind of stir it up. And personally, I think it brings out a little more flavor too. But that's just me, But that's a wonderful way to just clean it off, And that way you keep the berries kind of affordable as opposed to going out there and buying an organic type, which just could be very expensive, right? It's double the price sometimes.
Yes, and we don't know if it's 100% organic.
So yeah, yeah. The meaning of organic tends to shift a little bit.
Yes,
Yeah,
it does.
I don't know exactly where they're at anymore, but you know. So so it's just best to go out there, get berries, however you want them, however you need them, and then just go ahead and just, you know, rinse them off really well. That goes for any sort of fruits, you know. Obviously oranges, things like that. You know, they got such a thick skin.
Yes.
You don't need to worry about all that, you know, the organic
What
stuff.
about
So that's a great way.
Apples. Do the vinegar with the apples?
I wash them off, and you know, before, but I just wash them off just with rinsing them with water, typically, and maybe a little soap. Like, you know, we have this like spray soap thing. I put it on the apple and to wipe it off, you know.
Yeah.
And then basically I just wash it like I wash my hands. So that helps. Excellent. You know, so a little bit of soap and that should take you know, that should take off any residue, you know, coming off of them. So so those are a couple things to just kind of keep in mind. You know, fish, it doesn't always have to be salmon. You know, I mean, a lot of people think, okay, I got to get salmon to be brain healthy, to get those omega-3s that are really healthy for the brain, and it's wonderful, but salmon's very expensive.
It is.
One way to keep like be economical about it is just to go get canned fish. So get this. I get canned fish all the time. Like
canned fish?
Canned fish. Sardines all rolled together in the roller lid. Oh yeah. Now
I'm talking about really, like, I ain't from the country. I already had sardines, and poking beans.
So yeah, sardines, soup, very brain healthy, tons of omega-3s, and anchovies if you're into that, you know, and you can get them in those tins, and you can get them in the tins where they're basically soaked in olive oil, and sometimes I get the one that's soaked in olive oil with a little jalapeno. Oh, right. But a taste. But that's an economical way to get brain healthy fish into your diet, and you can always have it around. You can peel it right off, you know, in the middle of the day, you know, drop it on your salad, boom, boom, a little bit there, and you're done, you know.
Wow.
So, but I'm totally with you on the fruit in a salad. Like, I remember I was in a panic one time. I was going to a picnic back in grad school when I was in Atlanta, and I needed to make a salad. I got to bring a salad over, right? And it was a church event, and like I was like, oh, and it was like, you know, it was one of those singles things. So I got to impress. I had to impress. You know, so I got this recipe for like spinach and walnuts and strawberries, and I threw it all together. And like you said, it's like an explosion in your mouth, right? I was like, yes,
it is.
It's a flavor explosion. So I took it with me, and I was like, yes, I feel so good about this.
More, right? Well, I'm glad you showed up and you showed out at that picnic. Dr. Parks, thank you so much for joining us. Thank you all for chiming in and participating. If y'all have any questions before we let Dr. Parks go, definitely type in your comments. So I want to tell the folks a little bit about Relevate. And Relevate is a supplement. It is not a cure, a treatment.
It's not a drug,
not a drug. It's not a prevention. It is a supplement like your one-a-days. I mean, I don't know how many of you all take one-a-days for women or Centrum, a daily supplement. I take one of those, but I just had to have something for my brain because I may not have the time to eat healthy all the time. I just need something, a supplement to help maximize the nutrients that I provide to my brain the same way I provide to my body. So I want to tell y'all what comes in this, you see, it's almost gone, right? Because I take them. So it is you'll take 3 capsules a day. And this right here, this was interesting to me, y'all. This is the mineral, right? Because what Maureen was telling me, some tablets are not as dissolvable without certain minerals.
Yeah. So that dark one there is it carries all of our fat soluble nutrients. Yeah. So all the ones, so they're dissolved in their native oils that they come in. So that way, you know, we don't dry them up and put them in a dry form because they might not absorb very well, especially if you don't have it with food, right? So we want it to actually get in rather than just pass right through. So that helps it absorb. And then the others are it's okay if they're, you know, in the dry component.
So I appreciated that. And again, it is a supplement. What I was most excited about was the research that I could actually follow up on. I've already, for those of you who don't know what I do research. I had already done this research. I've done research at USC, the real USC, University of South Carolina. And we did our research with the MIND diet, the anti-inflammatory diets, the Mediterranean diet. So I knew what to eat, but life,
Yeah.
life. So supplement. And so for those of you who are interested and want to learn more about NeuroReserve and Relevate, the link is in my bio. Just click that link. You can follow Dr. Parks. He's going to tell you how to get in contact with him. Tell our folks how they can reach you and learn more about NeuroReserve, Relevate, and just overall healthy eating patterns and brain health.
Yeah, well, so the name of the company is NeuroReserve, and I really appreciate you letting me speak about this, because I know that this is not something that you take lightly, and you're evidence driven. So that's great,
Yeah.
And so they can reach us actually right here at NeuroReserve on Instagram, obviously, and through our website, which you can click right on your link there to go in and find us there and learn more about us. And we have a wonderful set of newsletters that we send out. With another thing that we really work hard at is to make sure that we have great information, quality information on how people can live a brain healthy life, not just nutrition. So we want to provide that to everyone. And in addition, of course, more information about Relevate, our product. And, like you were saying, when we designed it, a lot of our physicians, they said, hey, we're not going to try and make a replacement for diet. We don't want people to replace their diet. It's just that it is really, really hard for people to totally revamp and have the perfect diet. And that's why we wanted to go for that, a practical tool to help people help them reach that nutritional profile of the Mind diet, and it's very practical. And I urge you to give it a try. If you want to build your arsenal, right? You got exercise, you got sleep, you got nutrition, you got all those pieces, the health parts that we talked about, right? Work on all that, and you add on, Relevate. You're building an arsenal basically to help defend your brain for the long run. So anyway,
I love it. I feel like we're going to have you back, and I'm glad that you mentioned all those other elements, because it's not just diet by itself. It's not just exercise by itself. It's not just sleep and socialization. It's all of that. So I think it warrants us to have conversations, more realistic, tangible, life-changing conversations about what people can do to preserve a healthy brain and just to promote just brain healthy lifestyles. I like that. Dr. Parks, we appreciate you.
Oh, it's wonderful to be with you. Dr. Macie, you're awesome.
Thank you so much. You are as well. And thank y'all for joining me. Hey, I guess I'll go live again, because y'all have just been a great audience. Thank you all so much. And this video will be available on both of our pages after we end here today, as soon as I figure out how to end the live, because this is my last live. So I'm going to try to figure out how to end this thing, but don't pay me no attention. Thank you, Nana's Books. Thank you, Magic Did It too. Thank you all for participating.
Thank
See you next time.
so much, everyone.
Thank you.
Bye, Dr. Macie.
Bye-bye.
Bye, everyone.